March 15, 2019. It was a Friday in Christchurch, New Zealand. That afternoon, Muslims across the city were gathering for Friday prayers. At two mosques, Al-Noor Mosque and Linwood Islamic Center, worshippers were preparing for what should have been an ordinary day of prayer. Instead, the day became one of the darkest moments in New Zealand's modern history. A heavily armed man entered the mosques and carried out a terrorist attack that killed 51 people and injured dozens more. The victims came from different backgrounds and generations. Some had lived in New Zealand for decades, others had arrived more recently. Among them were parents, children, elderly people, students, and members of a community who had gathered for prayer. The attacker was 28-year-old Australian citizen Brenton Tarrant. Before the attack, Tarrant had published an extremist manifesto outlining his racist and anti-Muslim beliefs. He had also attempted to turn the attack into propaganda, using the internet to broadcast and spread material connected to what he was about to do. But to understand how this happened, it is necessary to go back much further than March 15, 2019. Who was Brenton Tarrant before he became a terrorist? And how did an apparently ordinary young man eventually become responsible for one of the deadliest attacks in New Zealand's history? Brenton Tarrant was born on October 27, 1990, in Grafton, New South Wales, Australia. He grew up in a relatively ordinary family. His father, Rodney Tarrant, worked as a rubbish collector, while his mother was a teacher. Tarrant also had a sister. During his childhood, there was little indication that he would eventually become a mass murderer. Like many other children, he attended school and grew up in a relatively normal environment. However, as he became older, Tarrant was described as increasingly quiet and socially isolated. He attended Grafton High School, where he was not known as an especially popular or outgoing student. There were also early indications of racist and anti-Semitic attitudes. According to reports, Tarrant was reprimanded at school for anti-Semitic expressions. These incidents are significant because they show that some of the prejudices that would later become central to his extremist ideology had already appeared during his youth. However, his later radicalization cannot be explained by a single event. His transformation happened gradually over a number of years. After finishing school, Tarrant became interested in computers, video games, physical fitness, and online communities. He eventually worked at a gym in Grafton, where he was reportedly interested in helping other people with exercise and fitness. For a period of time, his life appeared relatively ordinary. There was nothing about his everyday existence that would immediately suggest that he would eventually commit a terrorist attack. But as the years passed, his interests and worldview began to change. One important event occurred in 2010, when his father died from cancer. After his father's death, Tarrant inherited money. He eventually used part of this money to travel extensively around the world. These travels took him to several countries across Asia, Europe, and other regions. At first glance, international travel might seem like something that would expose a person to different cultures and perspectives. For Tarrant, however, the experience appears to have contributed to a different process. His political and ideological beliefs became increasingly extreme. He began paying more attention to immigration, demographic changes, Islam, and far-right political movements. Over time, he became increasingly immersed in online extremist communities and consumed propaganda that reinforced his existing beliefs. Instead of challenging his prejudices, the material he encountered increasingly confirmed them in his mind. This process of radicalization would eventually lead him toward an ideology centered on racism, anti-immigrant beliefs, conspiracy theories, and political violence. And eventually, his travels would bring him to New Zealand. This is where the next chapter of his story begins.